the thing is, sometimes I want them to make the choice to step into that, but I've got to leave them to make the choice. I've worked with a lot of young people through the bulk of my adult, life, and the best learning moments, the best moments of observation, of mentorship, discipleship, is what they do with discretionary time and room to make a choice, not necessarily just between a good and a bad or a right and a wrong, but just to make a choice.
My friend, your role as a father is truly critical. You are so important and you don't hear it enough. The fact that you woke up this morning, put your feet on the ground and decided to love and serve your family and to spend a little time investing in yourself through this podcast, it is so important, so critical. And I honor you for investing in yourself so that you can show up well for your family. 3 nuggets that hit me from my conversation with my good friend Josh Seykora today are: 1, the power of letting your kids make choices; 2, the importance of setting boundaries as a family; and 3, the value of having a plan for yourself while also having freedom to be interruptible. Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview incredible fathers, gaining wisdom from their stories for you and I to grow in our own craft. I'm your guide, Ned Shout, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 11 to 18, and husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 21st year of marriage. So yeah, my friend, I am in the thick of it, and I am working daily to rebel against the low expectations for fathers and create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. You and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. This episode is brought to you by the Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. The role of the father is to serve, guide, steward, provide, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my good friend, Josh Seykora. He's been a great friend to me, trusted friend, and one of my fitness coaches over the past couple of years. He is an all-around incredible man, husband, father. Enjoy meeting my good friend, Josh. All right, here we go. Josh Seykora, welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes. How you feeling today?
I'm good, Ned. It's good to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. We've been talking about this for a while now, and here we are talking fatherhood. Funny enough, we're both sitting on the same island, but we're just a few miles away talking through the webcams.
Yeah.
Josh, how old do you find yourself today?
Today, 49. In a couple of weeks, 50.
Bro, about to be 50 years old. How does that feel?
Turning 40 was literally just a number. I do not feel 50.
Yeah. You don't,
but,
I don't know what 50 looks like, but you look like a savage, bro. And I've seen you in the CrossFit gym. You are a gangster.
Thanks.
So, but for you stepping into 50, like, what's going through your mind?
I think, I've always thought you spend your 20s, your early 30s, really learning still, like developing a trade or a skill or profession, career, starting a family. 30s and 40s are really about, I guess, contributing through that role, like really putting a hand to plow, so to speak. And then I kind of always pictured the 50s as like, I still have kids, but also just investing in other people, starting to almost like permission in a way to I can use my experience, good and bad, to invest in other people. So in a sense, it's just a number, but I think it is, with that number, it's a decade of life where, can still, really invest in some people around you, including my kids. I'm a little, I think most people my age, probably some of their kids are gone, we still got ours. So it feels good, and it's kind of my wheelhouse.
So as you reflect on your 40s, right, you're coming to the end of your 40s, what do you look at your 40s and go, man, this was a great milestone or season or learned X, Y, or Z? Like, what sticks out to you as you reflect on the past decade?
I think, first of all, my 40s did not look like what I thought it would look like. You and I know each other fairly well. We've shared a lot of talk story. There was some, hiccups along the road, that I really, gosh, like I didn't want that in my 40s, like I wanted to be free of that kind of stuff, just raise the kids, hit a
Mm,
rhythm career wise. My wife and I were doing some new things, but looking back, just really learning the importance of forgiveness, the importance of resiliency, of
hmm.
dependency on God. I think, it was a time in my life where really my faith in God and Jesus really where the rubber hits the road, like really
Yeah.
I was challenged in that, to apply it. And kind of, it's definitely like found myself, oh yeah, you can mature a little bit, need to grow up a little bit. And we did a big move to Hawaii, and we started a business. We, kind of changed spheres that we were working in. Um, but just watching, I mean, I enjoyed my 40s because I got to see my kids grow. It's like where they all came of
Hmm.
age. It was in this decade that all of my kids, from my youngest to my oldest, are really coming of age. So I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that.
Killer. If somebody's listening to this and they're 39, what advice would you give to them as they step into the next decade?
Um, that's good. I think don't let time pass you by, meaning like know what you're doing and why, set healthy boundaries around family relationships, work
Mm,
dynamics, rhythms. Like the 40s was where my wife Sarah and I, we really got intentional about setting rhythms in our life for our family, not excluding other people, but just, why are we saying yes to something, no to something, doing something, but really cultivating rhythms of life. Because I feel like in a way the late 30s, the 40s is where you can really enjoy that rhythm of life. Of you got, maybe you're married, maybe you have kids, maybe you have a job or a change in career, but there's a richness to it. And so I'd be like, and
hmm.
just enjoy the 40s. Like I always tell people, the 40s the new 30. Like
Mm.
just hit your stride. You're hitting your stride. So
Yeah, I love the setting the boundaries. I think that's important. And in
mhm.
certain areas, I think that that's still true for me, that I need to set some boundaries in some areas.
Yeah.
Josh, if you and I were sitting down again and you were 59 and you're like, bro, I'm turning 60 in 2 weeks, what would you like to be true? What would you, that conversation, what would you like to say, man, this is true about my 50s?
I think that, I chose to pursue something either in my work, career, or with my children or in life where I really sets me up to finish strong in my 60s, both as a husband, as a father, someone with parents still around, but also really investing in other people. One of the things I love to do the most is like, I love to coach, right?
Yeah.
I love to coach not just sports or fitness, but coach people in life. I love to see, younger, emerging and generations really step into what they feel they're called to or their purpose, and just giving them the tools or the platform to do that. So I think looking back in a sense, if through my children, but in addition to that, in a way, almost kind of, I've heard it said like multiplying yourself,
Hmm.
like helping people, who maybe they want to step into sports or coaching or teaching or speaking, that can help people do that. Yeah,
Love it. Yeah, I mean, you served as a great coach for Presley and I. She's 15 now, but
it's fun.
you coached us for over a year.
Hmm.
2-3 days a week in CrossFit, and we learned a ton. And you're
Yeah,
a great coach. Josh, how many years you been married?
we just finished 19, so we got the big 20 coming up
Heck
in
yeah.
September next year.
Heck yeah, dude. Incredible. Incredible. And
Hmm.
how many kiddos do you have? And like, just give us a breakdown of the ages.
Yeah, so I got four kids. The oldest three are boys, 16, 14, and 10, and then our youngest is a little girl, and she's 9.
Love it, dude. Um, in your opinion, Josh, what's the role of the father?
I really see it as guiding or raising my children to become a contributing member of community,
Hmm.
whether that's in a network of friends, family, a town, a workplace. But I think, we spend most of our lives as adults. And so it's helping them mature into each season of life so that when they venture out on their own, as much as they've developed the skills to take care of themselves and provide for others, that they would see themselves as a vital member of a community that contributes, that brings something to the table, whether through relationship or work or product or anything, and that that they're part of that. And ultimately for me, it means like really seeking the Lord and kind of knowing or have a sense of what God's leading them into next. And so even on a personal level, like I try to like get my kids to depend on Jesus as soon as possible. You know, in a way, I joke that I'll throw my kids at the feet of Jesus as soon as possible. And then to get them to walk with Him, turn to Him as soon as they can, and that then feeds into becoming a contributing member of a community, of a society, of a network of friends. And that's going to look different for everyone. So it's not necessarily like, oh, just be successful. I mean, they will. I hope they're successful, whatever that looks like, or be a strong leader. I think a lot of it too is helping them recognize their unique personalities, their unique strengths, their unique weaknesses, their unique passions and giftings, and not to minimize any of those. And so it's really, I think we have like kind of 14 or 15 years to do that. Because really by the time you probably relate, when they're 15, man, they're making their choices. They're making their decisions. They're just doing it in our home.
Yeah. How does a father, because I agree with you. It's, I think one of maybe our most critical component or role is to teach our kids, reveal to them who they are. So like, what's a practical way that you're speaking life into your kids, to teach them who they are while also relying on God as their compass or Jesus as their compass?
Yeah, I think for us, it started early on when we knew that we were expecting a child or my wife was expecting a child. We would spend time just praying and talking together, just kind of getting God's input into this particular child. Oftentimes, I think even as a name comes to mind, whether we think it's from the Lord or just comes to mind, that can allude to something of the potential personality of that child. We often remember, we often tell the kids, this is why we named you this. And it's not just, God spoke, but like for our oldest, Noah, one of the things is that it was Noah Jason Seykora, that he would be set apart in his generation. He would be a friend to many. And he really has shown that. Like we've moved a few times more than most kids would probably want, but he has a wide, diverse group of friends. And he seems to navigate those relatively seamlessly. With Caleb, he's a tenacious young man. And, so that's kind of where it starts, with Faith and with Julia, is like reminding them, this is why we named you that, and calling that out of them. And then I think too, like with our second son, his learning style is so different than his older brother. And we had to walk with him for quite a few months to help him understand that, yeah, you learn this way, or we've noticed that you really like to walk and talk about concepts you're learning in school. You like to do things with your hand. And as soon as he realized that, then he starts doing it, just towards school in one area, he starts to see a little bit more freedom and less tension. So those are some of the things, like, they all have different organizational skills, cleanliness, what they're, how they feel loved by us. Like, one of my kids, we can just sit and watch a show together. One of my kids will sit and watch sports together. Some of them, like with my daughters, even very different, right? It's just so different. So I think it's just making those observations and then speaking that out to them. We found too, as they gravitate towards something they seem to really enjoy, we let them go with it, not with no restrictions, but we invest in it for a time, or we make room for that. So, yeah.
I love it. I think, in hearing what you're saying, it's really important for the father to know your kid, right? To know your kid. But then it's almost like you got to know them better than they know themselves, right? So you're saying, hey, I see this in you. I noticed this in you. And it's interesting because 2 days ago, one of my mentors said to me, we're all prophets in our kids' lives. So I want to get your feedback. We're all prophets in our kids' lives, but not all prophecies come from God. Meaning that we could be speaking into our kids' lives, whether it's with our words or with our deeds, things that are kind of like detrimental to them, right? Like God wants us to speak life, right? Blessing, be fruitful, multiply, expand on who you're designed to be. So talk to me or give me your feedback on this. Like if I'm a prophet in my kids' life, I am speaking truth to them. I have an opportunity to do so. How much of what I'm saying is you were already destined to be this way?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then how much is it if I say you see Noah and he's determined or a good
Mm-hmm.
friend, and as you affirm that and say, dude, you're such a good friend, it becomes more true, not
Mm-hmm.
maybe because he was predestined, but
Right.
because you planted the seed that is who he is. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I love that. I think, yeah, we are prophets in a sense because we're either communicating to them something they may not have previously understood. Maybe it was like just in the back of their head or this sense, but we're speaking with clear words, a truth about them in a sense. We're
Yes.
helping them. I don't know if reveals right. We're kind of revealing and showing to them like, hey, this is who you are. Now we recognize too that they have to develop the skill set, the self-government, the discipline, the decision making to walk some of those things out.
Right.
Like so sometimes with Noah, like he's such a good friend, but it's always like, well, are you, what are you doing to be a good friend? Like what are you
Mm-hmm.
doing? He's one of the most inclusive people throughout the history of his life that I've ever met. Um, but I think there's still choice. Like sometimes, and that's the thing is sometimes I want them to make the choice to step into that, but I've got to leave them to make the choice. I've worked with a
Mm-hmm.
lot of young people through the bulk of my adult, life, and the best learning moments, the best moments of observation, of mentorship, discipleship, is what they do with discretionary time and room to make a choice, not necessarily just between a good and a bad or a right and a wrong, but just to make a choice and then
Mm-hmm.
let them wear that. And then if there's regret or disappointment or a sense of unease, then talking to them about that. So I think, I think personalities are a little bit ingrained, but they've got to choose to nurture that. And then the
Mm-hmm.
words I use, my wife uses, go so far.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
then it's like we just want to correct, right? Because we want the best for them. But if I just
Mm-hmm.
correct, there's a difference between correction and challenging. Like I like to raise the bar, but how am I raising the bar without just always nitpicking
Right.
correction, you know? So they got to
So good.
choose so much. Yeah.
So you mentioned the word a couple of times, skills, and you
Mm-hmm.
have a son that's coming of age, next 2-3 years,
Yeah.
ready to kind of like go out on his own. Is you're a little bit on the ahead of it. What are a couple of skills that you go, man, when this kid's, packed his bags in his car driving away, these 2 or 3 skills are really important to the Seykora family that
Mm-hmm.
I want my kid to have gained from living under my roof the last 18 years?
Yeah. I think one, and this is in no particular order. So I'll kind of list them off. I think, be solution oriented,
Mm,
situational awareness. There's a couple others that might come to mind, but like situational awareness, just being aware of what's happening around you,
yeah,
aware of
that's
the
so good.
impact that you bring into a situation on another person. My brother is military, and he would always talk about situational awareness, teaching their soldiers. Always like I tell the kids, have your head on a swivel. Not to be
Mm-hmm.
distracted, but just to know what's happening around you. It was one of the reasons we had our kids. For me, had our kids play soccer. My wife's a soccer player, loves it, but it was a team sport. Like, and you had to have constant situational awareness, constant head on the swivel, because their passion, our oldest two, is surfing. In fact, all of our
Mm-hmm.
kids, their passion, if they have one for sport, they tend to be more individualized sports, surfing, golf, gymnastics, where you're focused really on you and the now. Um, and so we wanted them to be in a sport like soccer or flag football where they had to be challenged with situational awareness so that they can bring that into a situation, whether it's a room, a job, a restaurant, driving. So that would be one for sure, situational awareness. The other one, just solution oriented.
I love that
Um,
too.
Worked with a lot of young people again over the past 30 years, and things have shifted over the decades. Are you, when it comes to life, are you a victim of your
Mm-hmm.
circumstances? Like sometimes, yeah, I didn't pick where I was born or the city I lived in as a child. Am I just a casual observer in life? Meaning, well, whatever it is will be, or am I a vital participant?
Yeah.
And, you know, there's enough problems in the world created by people and broken relationships. Like, what are you going to be the solution? And, what one of our kids just a few days ago had a great idea. It was falling apart with some other kids. And I said, well, stop criticizing them, but offer the solution.
Yeah.
What do you want to see happen? Why? And how can you kind of not convince, but explain to people, hey, what about this? Let's do it this way. So those are two that come to mind off this bat, that they can carry that to their adult world.
Yes. Those are
Yeah.
great. Those are great. And I think they really hit all aspects of life, right?
Yeah.
If you could pull that into situations, solution oriented, positive, aware, not just positive, like wishy-washy,
Right.
like I'm going to come up with a solution. And then awareness is huge, man. I feel
Yeah.
like so many people are just cruising without any awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
When did you embrace fatherhood? So I think there's a moment you hear you're going to be a dad, to the baby's born, to you hold the kid the first time, to they say your name the first time, to you play outside with them. And I think it happens at different times for dads. When did you embrace it and go, this matters significantly, and I want to go all in on being a dad?
Yeah, that's really good. So we were living overseas in Australia. We were doing really what we felt like was good work with a great organization, and that provided me the opportunity to travel quite a bit. And so, I was married. We had our first two boys, and I can't remember exactly when it was, but I definitely recall once I was on a trip and I was gone. I think for our anniversary, our wedding anniversary. And I never just left on a trip without consulting my wife. Like, hey, what do you think about this invitation? And because she's extremely supportive. Sometimes we'd go as a family. But I remember coming home or being on that trip, and even though I had my wife's blessing to go, I was like, what am I doing? Like, why am I missing like wedding anniversaries? I don't care. I mean, I care, but it's like, so what if like this particular meeting that happens every year is important and almost required? It's going to be like that every year. I'm not going to do this every year. I'm not doing this anymore. And then that carried over into kind of making this decision of not being gone too many days in a row, not missing birthdays, not making wedding. Obviously, I don't even know if there ever was an exception, but I just held to that because I wanted to be there. And that was also around the time where we started to reestablish new rhythms in our life that created freedom, where I could put my hand to what I needed to do, that either God had asked us to do or provide for the family, or justify, the donations that we were receiving to do the work, but then also be so available for the kids. And I think as the kids got older, my wife and I, we decided when they turned 8, when it was appropriate, they would come on a trip with me, just them,
That's
them.
cool.
And so it was like, now I get to do it with them, and I get to spend this time with them. And that's where I kind of learned some of their personalities. And, it doesn't have to be to some extravagant land, or, it could be local, it doesn't really matter, but because I know that, isn't available to everyone where they can do that. But it was probably when Noah and Caleb were, younger, primary school, where I really started to desire it more, enjoy playing with them. And then, man, just literally watching them do something they love, like just sitting back and like, I'm really enjoying watching them have joy. So it was morphing. We had, we had one miscarriage, and it was a surprise baby. We weren't planning, and we were walking through the emotions of that. And then to lose it was this kind of sense, like I felt guilty for like operating in shock. Like, oh no, we're like, we have this other little one. We can't have another one now. And, and it happens, like you start to realize how often miscarriages actually happen in that. But not that I needed that, but I think it was like going to cherish every moment. And I don't know if this happens to you, but with boys, man, like sometimes the boys will come in at like 9:30, 10 at night, and that's when they'll open up. But that's when I remember my wife will be like, that's the moment I have to embrace. Like, so
be ready for it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the things I really like hearing, and it might just be because I feel like in chaos mode a little bit, is just creating boundaries and then the rhythms
Yeah.
Really good. And then I think, something just to stick it out there for guys to think about is, that 8 years old, you mentioned 8 years old felt like a
Mm-hmm.
good time to go on a one-on-one trip with your kid. And it's like, they're not too old where they might not think you're cool anymore.
Yeah.
You want to start it early, right?
Yeah.
And then it's not like they're 6 and they can't hang. So it's
Right.
kind of like a great age to go start to cultivate what does it mean to be, 2, 3, 4 days out with dad. And it's just the two of us outside of the rhythm of home and school and mom. And I think that creating relationships with our kids is super critical.
Mm-hmm.
And to do it, when they're under 10, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember one guy told me, or maybe I heard it on a podcast or something. When your kid is like under 8, you just wish they'd stop asking you questions. You're just like, please stop talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when they're, 13 to 18, you just wish they would talk
It
to
would.
you.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think the way to combat that is never tell them to stop,
Yeah.
asking you the questions, because you're like, stop talking. It's too much. Don't ask me another question. So finally they're like, okay, cool. I'm not going to anymore because you trained me not to. So I'm not going
Yeah.
to, end up having a relationship with you to the extent that we would hope when they're 14, 15, 16
Yeah.
years old.
It's
Okay.
good.
So how are things different with your daughter? So you have, these 3 boys, they're older, you have this relationship with them. What do you see as the dynamic difference in your role as a father to your sons versus your daughter?
Yeah, that's good. So for example, we'll just use the trip scenario because we've kind of been hitting on that. Like I found trips that my kids, there was something. So part of the trip was we do something unique, something they enjoy. So for example, I was in Orlando for a couple of weeks, brought one of my boys with me, and we wanted to hit Star Wars Disney, but it was full. But we hit Volcano Bay, this water park, and he just loves, you know, Caleb, he just loves adventure, right? Just loves to just go after stuff. So the water park hit what he loves. Noah, we went snowboarding, we've been mountain climbing together, Thaden was just quality time together. And so, it was really super adventurous. For Julia, we just got on a trip together. It's just time, like doing what she likes to do. And we met one of her gymnastics heroes who's an Olympian. We did this home build with her, and then we just spent the day at the San Diego Zoo, and all day long, man, she's like, Dad, I just love this so much. And so I've noticed with her, she has 3 older brothers. She's strong. She's a strong individual.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's just really, showing her that love. I'm not a physical touch kind of guy. Like I love acts of service, words of encouragement, but just to, at her age, appropriately, just really showing her that physical affection, that physical love. And, I was challenged by a good friend of mine who has daughters, more my boy's age and older. And they're like, if the daughters don't receive the love from their father, that affirmation, they will go searching for it elsewhere, right. And so showing her what that healthy, strength, she's still a very strong girl, but she needs that nurture, that care, that adoration. In a way, it's like the things I had to learn the hard way as having no sisters, being married with my wife who, is a very strong, capable woman, strong leader, but being able to show that kind of adoration. And so I think that's one of the differences for me. All of the kids love their quality time, but for Julia, it's just like I had to learn how to do her hair when my wife was away a few years ago, and she taught me how to do it. And it's not like girly, because she's adventurous as well. Know? But
I think I've seen her with a broken arm or something. I don't know. It seems like every one of your kids was in a cast this year.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm still learning because she's our youngest, So, yeah.
Yeah, but the cool thing is men listening and myself is there's this pursuit of your kids.
Yeah.
Right. And this pursuit to know them. And I think that's a difference of not just guiding them as and you said it, like it's easy sometimes to fall into my role as corrective. But again, is that all we want our kids to hear? And then the opportunity we have, like, to know them. My kids are my friends. Like I
Yeah.
love my kids. I'm still their dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they're also my friends. Like, and what
Yeah.
does that mean? It means I get to know who they are and then continue to like help them see the beauty of who they are, right? Because
Yeah.
the world tends to want to kind of like make you average, bring you down, look like everybody else. And like that's not how we're made, unique
Yeah.
and beautiful and fun. Um, Josh, how do you have a relationship with your dad now?
I do. Yeah.
And how's your relationship with your dad?
It's good. It's quite good. Part of my parenting style, and this is my parents' story as well, I think, is my dad's a very strong, capable guy. He's
Mm-hmm.
got great integrity, has always had great integrity. Growing up, though, he was at odds and at ends with my mother. And my mother's a very strong person. She was, for the most part, as young children, our spiritual mentor until my father stepped into that. But one thing my
Mm-hmm.
dad taught us when we were older, I'm in the middle of three boys, is he came to us and basically asked our forgiveness. He repented for what he had been reading in the Bible was, exasperating us as young men.
Mm-hmm.
He always just wanted the best for us, wanted us to work hard, to achieve something, have a goal, be purposeful, not just get lost in the, wash of the world. And I think that's something that I learned from him and something that I try to do with my kids, because I can come across very authoritative. I can come across harsh when I'm just trying to be firm. And the times that I've gone back to the kids and said, hey, I was wrong, but also recognizing that how I repent to them, to relate with them on a value, like we're both valuable. Yeah, I'm dad and you're not, but
Yeah.
just that vulnerability. But I also learned that they accept that forgiveness differently based on their personalities. So kind of mixing there with my dad, because my dad does that still to this day. I know if he hears something from the Lord or if he has a conviction in his spirit about something, he will make it right. So.
That's good. What's something you appreciated about your dad growing up, and what's something you wish your dad would have done differently?
He brought us along. It's from him that I learned how to work. I remember I was in seventh grade. My older brother always wanted to work. So when my brother hit seventh grade, he started working. He had a paper route when he was like 10, whereas I really enjoyed being with friends. So when seventh grade summer hit and my dad put me to work 40 hours a week for $1 an hour, painting lattice behind bushes in Minnesota heat and humidity, I remember complaining and being like, I just want to hang with my friends. So he said, okay, go ahead. You can go hang with your friends next week. I think by Wednesday, I was begging to come back to work because I realized how bored I was. And I was like, I could make $40 this week if I was working. So he instilled in us and in me a hard work ethic. He was always an example. He was a teacher, a coach, and a business owner. And he also had tenants, renters, and just always integrous. Never made excuses for anything, would always make things right. And so, but he brought us along in that early on, and I think though there were some things that when I hear him growing up, because he grew up on a farm, he had cars, like, I was like, there were things that he loved to do for whatever reason. I don't know. I've never actually asked him, like, I always thought, oh, my dad was so good working on cars. Like, he kind of stopped doing it when he had us. I think I would have loved to have learned more about cars, how to work on cars and things like that. Yeah, those are like, it's kind of funny. Hey, like, and then like hunting, he was a hunter and a fisherman, grew up on a farm, but then that kind of fiddled away and I don't know why, so yeah.
So would those be the things that you wish he did differently, teach you about hunting and working on cars, or is there
Yeah.
something else that you wish he did differently?
No, I think, that's it. I think, it's an interesting time you ask this question because, I kind of go back and forth between like how a father should be, like how much authority should I exhibit? How much freedom should I give? At what age does that change? I think there's not a lot I can say I wish he did differently, except I do carry some of that authoritative, maybe brash is the right word, out. And sometimes I'm like, oh, did I learn that from him or is that me or what is that? So, that would be kind of a, nuts and bolt kind of thing. But I I tend to try to
So
just focus on the positive. So
yeah, of course. And I think that the reason why I added this question
yeah.
to my list of podcast questions is like, you're 49 and you still have an opinion about your dad.
Mm-hmm.
And one day Noah's going to be 49 and
Mm-hmm.
somebody's going to ask him the question, or, potentially ask him the question. Doesn't even matter if he's asked. He'll have an opinion on what he
Yeah.
loved about how Josh Seykora, his dad, showed up, and maybe something he wished his dad would have done differently.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that we have to like ultimately change all these things. It's probably going to be true no matter what we do. Like
Mm-hmm.
perfect family, perfect dad doesn't exist. But that idea that our influence in our sons and daughters' lives will live with them well beyond them turning 18, 19, 20.
Yeah.
I mean, we have huge impact.
Yeah.
When you see yourself show up brash in with the family, right? It's easier for us to like kind of just sometimes be a total dick to the family versus,
Mm-hmm.
somebody out in at the grocery store or whatever. What happens, right, for you internally? How do you, because I think all of us have these things about ourselves that we don't necessarily love, like a way that we show up in situations when we might be quote unquote pushed to the limit, which is really still our responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you find go on inside of you? And then how do you remedy that? And then maybe guys could take that into their own lives.
Mm-hmm. I think, one of the areas that I've had to really control, or not control, like kind of give over in my life is responding in anger and frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Because what actually riles me is when someone will say, "Oh, you're angry." I'm like, "Oh no, I'm not angry." Kind of like, I can show you what anger is, and this is not it.
Yeah.
But realizing that, oh gosh, maybe like this inclination I have in my personality, I've really got to watch that. So when I show up brash, I'm usually walking into a situation that's out of my control,
Mm,
and I want
yeah.
to control it, or that definitely happens. I want to like all of a sudden, hey, dad's home. Hi, I'm here. Like, I'm in control. Like everybody should stop with, I don't say it like this, but I think this is what I think and probably how I act is like, now that I'm here, everybody should stop and consider that now dad is home. And so now
Mm-hmm,
they're just,
mm-hmm,
listen to me, it's like almost as if I don't care if mom's been here all day and the house is still standing and you guys are all alive and she's cooked and all that.
yeah,
Like, I'm now home. Okay. So,
yeah. Yeah.
so that would be one. Two, usually when I turn up brash, someone or something else is occupying room space in my head, and I've been
Mm-hmm.
chewing on it, and I'm not even aware of it.
Yeah. That's
And
good.
one of the best pieces of advice I got from this kind of incredible psychiatrist, I was on an elite sports retreat with this was crazy, a bunch of Olympians, but he's like, nobody talks to ourselves more than ourselves, potentially God, but really, we don't even aren't aware of what we're thinking about. And I will carry that in, and then like that's the straw that kind of breaks the camel's back, and then all of a sudden I'm lashing out at the kids and I don't even realize what I've been mulling on.
Yeah.
So those are usually two things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I got a question for you. Kind of like a philosophy, spiritual question. Because a moment ago you started to say something about like you needed control, but then you paused yourself and kind of said like, well, I kind of surrendered it. Kind of in my mind, you were alluding to God helping you in the situation. But what I find interesting is I've been leaning in more to Galatians, fruits of the Spirit with my kids. And then, in my own mind thinking, what metrics am I using? Am I using the metrics of the world, status, money, car, whatever? Or if I look year over year, is the fruit growing, right? You got peace, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. And the one that stands out as interesting is a fruit of the Spirit is self-control.
Yeah.
So it's like, in a sense, you and I do, as fathers, as husbands, as human beings, as God's creation, we do have the ability to control ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But where's that fine balance of like, I'm God controlling myself and I'm surrendered controlling myself? What do you think?
Yeah, that's really good. I think when I think about self-control, like we could you could call it self-discipline, although I don't think that's exactly what he's talking about. I think I'm choosing not to allow my emotions to govern me. So I look at it this way. I believe I have a mind, all right, the ability
Yep.
to think, make decisions. I have a will, the mind is where I can think and reason, create, imagine, formulate
Yeah.
ideas. My will is in this ability to decide. I can decide to do one thing over another. I can know the right thing to do and choose to do the wrong thing. And then my emotions help me understand either my decisions or something that's happened to me or something that's happening around me, whether it's grief, frustration, joy. But I'm not governed by my emotions. I don't want to be emotionally governed. I think self-control is that, this kind of like this, the ability to not react,
Yes. Yeah.
basically, but to develop a response. And as much as I believe that, and I'm able to exhibit that, I was able to exhibit it as a coach. I'm often able to exhibit it, when I be leading teams or painting a house. But sometimes at home, man, it's like I just give myself liberty to react. Like I'm so tired of exhibiting self control, and I don't want to be impulsive, but decisive. And sometimes I'm
Yeah.
not decisive. I'm very indecisive. So it's like, for me, you bring up a really good point. But I think that's maybe what it is. I think self-discipline and self-government is basically disciplining or governing myself, as a lifestyle to do what is right, consistently. But self-control is like, I don't allow myself to impulsively react to a situation. Like, I don't know if I would be a great police officer or a great military person as much as I love the idea of it. Like, my older brother shows an incredible amount of self-control. I know he's not perfect, but like, you see some of the best guys controlled, Yeah, I don't know if that's accurate, but
No, that's good.
here.
So two questions for you, or two thoughts that come up. One is an acknowledgement, really. In asking about the role of the father, one of the things you really leaned into was allowing your kids the space to make decisions. And you didn't say it in this, you were kind of like, doesn't necessarily need to be right or wrong, but what do they do in their free time? You had a different word for it, not free time.
Yeah, I call it discretionary time.
Yeah. And so I love that, because that's what you're talking about, is like self-control is a fruit of the spirit. Now as an adult is like, you have to make decisions and then live with those decisions. So helping your kids do that at 6, 8, 15, 16. So that's acknowledgement number one. I think that's really cool, tying those together. Number two is you are a fitness coach. You have been an athlete. And there's two parts to this. How much emphasis, how much importance is there in disciplining or self-controlling your actual physical body to be able to show up and love and serve? Because I think sometimes we disconnect our physicality to our spirituality or fatherhood, etc. So how important is it to have a plan around fitness and nutrition for yourself? And before you answer, something I've noticed unique about your family is, especially like your wife Sarah will be like, oh, Noah can't come do this today or whatever. He did a lot today, so we want him to rest. And so, I mean, I feel like sometimes our family's like balls to the wall always. But like last night we watched a show and everyone fell asleep. Right. So I think you guys have been good, it seems from the outside, about kind of monitoring the food intake and the sleep or rest. So anyways, thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's good. It's a lot. So, part of what my wife and I did, what we created, the fitness that when I was coaching you at the Nefesh Academy, was this idea that like what we're feeding our mind, our body, our soul, our spirit impacts all the other aspects. So if I eat junk, then my thinking will be a little bit cloudy. Like, I even think like there can be a hampering on clarity of spirit and decision making. So rest fits into that. And so, trying to bring that back to the first part of your question was, I lost my train of thought. Help me out here, bro.
Yeah, like for you as a father, right? So let's just bring it back to you. How important is it for you to have some regiment so that you can show up well for the family?
I think I think part of being, self-disciplined or having a discipline is having a plan. Okay. But there's some flexibility into that. I'm interruptible. when it came to like a fitness
Ooh, I
plan.
like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, when it comes to like a fitness plan, my wife and I used to kind of plan every quarter. We work on a
Mm-hmm.
quarter system with our work. Like this is when we'll work out during that time. Um, because as much as I want to give attention to my kids and need to, I don't want to idolize my kids. They should never
Yeah.
be an idol in my life nor seen as an idol. They are something that God has given me to steward, to care for. And so when I'm tired, when I'm not eating, not tired is one thing, but when I'm okay, if I'm hungry, if I'm lonely, if I'm tired, I'm angry, like those things just make me less fun to be around. I think I heard that in a counseling session. HALT, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you're one of those things, we tend to be more irritable. A lot of people are three
Got
or
it.
four of those things. So
Yeah.
fitness helps alleviate some aspects of that, and we would just make a plan around it, but it's interruptible. um, and then we tried to
What
pass
does
that.
interruptible mean, right? Because how does
Yeah,
interruptible, I get what it means, but
yeah,
how do you not turn it into, it's been 7 days since I've been to the gym, or it's been 2 weeks since I have, or I've had a beer every day for two
right.
weeks, right? Like finding it where it's just an excuse to like not actually follow through.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's good, because there's okay. We'll just take it to workout, like because I since coaching, I find that I would, if I wasn't working out with you, I'd be working out alone. I'm less motivated at times, and so
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'll get a call from home, and I'll be like, oh, I'm coming home now. I've taught the kids like, hey, I'm coaching at this time, or mom and I are working out at this time. Like, don't call us unless it's an emergency, and then learning to, when we needed to be interrupted for that and when not. Um, I think too, just because I'm exercising, doesn't justify me to maybe like be less diligent in another area of my life. It's like, well, just because I'm reading the Bible doesn't mean I shouldn't engage in Christian community or like spiritual disciplines. Just because I do one doesn't offset not doing something else. And so, we as even as with what I do, painting houses, traveling, I do spend a lot of time sitting, and I know I just feel better when I'm moving, whether it's in the ocean. Like some people go to the ocean here, right? Like it's surfing is their thing. Some people it's the gym, it's fitness, it's walking. But I think one common thing with people this day and age is you meet people, most people will say I feel better when I'm moving, when I'm doing something active and fit. And I take Dave Ramsey's quote about finances: "Live like no one else today, so you can live like no one else tomorrow." I apply
Yeah.
that to my overall physical, mental, and spiritual health. I want to live like no one else today, put in the time and the efforts, so that when I'm 65, 70, 75, I'm living like no one else in
Yes.
that age demographic. And then we tried to bring that into our kids' life. Like we control what we eat at home,
Yeah.
but when the boys are out and they have their own, green light cards, access to their own spending money, I can influence what they do. But at the end of the day, they have to choose. Like there's a few products where like, no, you will not have that. When you're 18, do whatever you want. I won't name them because a lot of a lot of
They're
people won't agree with me.
they're probably in my cupboard, so yeah.
They might be, yeah.
Don't make me feel bad.
No,
Uh, love it. Okay, so I want to flip gears for a minute,
yeah.
and before I ask my final question, I want to ask something that I think you could kind of share. Right now, your family's about to make a big move, a big change. So tell us what that is,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's important because I think sometimes we'll get stuck in a way and not take a big leap because it has impacts on the kids and stuff. So you're making a big move. What is that? And then how did you process that? So like if another dad was thinking about making a big shift, like what kind of wisdom would you share with him through the process of that you went through the last couple months?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so we're making a big move back to Western Australia. And to answer the second part of that question quickly, and I'll come back to it, is I think the best advice I received and would give to someone else is give your kids as much runway time as possible for the move date. So kind of back to this, it's a move back to Australia. All four of our children were born in Australia. We left there for a break, a sabbatical, and we couldn't go back about 8 years ago because of a visa reason. And then COVID hits, and here we are 100 years later, everybody, right? We're just kind of
Yep.
settled into life here in Hawaii, and our kids are loving it. Great groups of friends, great communities, great, experiences. And, it was about a year and a half ago where I was offered a position in Southern Cal, which was a really great position. only to have to be revoked very appropriately due to some budget constraints with the offering organization. They handled it very well. There was no hard feelings. So that had kind of been a precursor for our children that this might happen. And so then everything just kind of went quiet. And so when this position was brought up, it was literally a text message that said, "Hey, would you apply for this?" And I was like, "No, we're not coming back to Australia." We had put it out of mind, only to have another text message from someone else in that, area. And so we prayed about it. We did. And it was hard. But what I did is I had some dads who had just gone through this recently. And I always remembered one of them said he gave his kids as much runway time as possible, especially older kids. And so I was afraid of the response of the kids. Anger, mad, like defiance, rebellion. And they actually handled it better than I expected when we first presented it. We presented it as, Dad has been asked to consider this. Mom and I have prayed and talked about it. We feel it's worth pursuing. And so we kept them involved. And this going back to what we said at the beginning, guys, I challenge you to take this before the Lord and see what God might be saying to you about this.
And you told your kids to do that.
Yeah, that's what we told them to do. Go to the Lord now. And we had a variety of responses, everything from like, I've been having dreams about Australia, which one of our kids was even before this, to,
wild.
Oh, it's a no for me. Like, no, God said no to me. But it's like, well, you kind of have to go where mom and dad go. And
so talk to me about that. Like, if you're teaching your kid to rely on God and giving them this space to do so, and it's like, I could go pray right now and feel like God's telling me something, and then 2 weeks later be like, yeah, that definitely wasn't true. So how do you navigate that with your kid to let them feel, see, hear, wrestle with, and come and say, yeah, God's saying no. God's definitely telling me no about this. And then that not, I don't know, just you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. And so that was early on in it. And what I didn't do is I didn't correct that. I didn't correct it. I think the only thing I may have said in that kind of a situation was, for all of our kids as well, you are still living under this household and you do have to go where we go, at this point in your life. What you do in the, and we were quiet. We were careful to be like, well, how much do they want to do in the future? Because we wanted them to be present in the moment. And I don't always get it right from God, right? I don't sometimes. So I didn't correct it, let them sit on it. But then that was early on. But then as it got more and more evident that this was going to be an offer that we had to pray about accepting, then we really just kept dialoguing about it. We kept talking about it. And as much as I was fearful of the emotional response and like, my kid's going to hate me, they're going to not talk to me for years or whatever, that really is fear, and fear from the enemy is unreality. It's something that could happen, probably won't, but probably won't. And then, and then I was challenged with like, I'm not going to give in to fear. I'm going to, believe in the best of my kids. And over time, like from the oldest to the youngest, they just started getting different senses from the Lord. And then they started to experience the grief of leaving a place they love, but also the joy or potential joy of the new adventure ahead. So,
and how do you let them do that?
So
without trying to fix it, right? Because I think as a dad, sometimes we're like, "Oh, you're gonna love it. Oh, it's gonna be great. Don't worry." So you let them experience it, and maybe how'd you do that?
Yeah. So I mean, we do talk it up, but not like mystically. We talk it up, but like we'll consider like we are drawing parallels to the things they love here to this town Bustleton south of Perth that are similar there. So much of what's in that town is similar to here. We were intentional about talking to each of the kids alone at different times because they're so influenced by one another that and so that helped a lot, and they felt the freedom there to maybe share some excitement or share some anger that they were holding back in the group. Because if they were angry, another kid would correct them like, it's not that big of a deal. Or if they were super happy, another kid would be like, why are you so happy about this? So those were some of the things we did there. And I think we just let them share and process. And then with some of our kids, man, it was like literally 10 at night, they would unload, right? Okay, now I'm going to be
Mm.
up till midnight, but I need to be.
Yes.
But we made it, how do I want to say? I never necessarily asked them, go and get a decision for the family from the Lord. Ask God what he's saying to you about this.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So you're not putting the pressure on them,
Yeah.
nor are you putting the um, whatever you come
Freedom,
back with is what we're
responsibility.
gonna do. Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're teaching them, like, and in a sense, it's like, hey, this is what God's telling me to do as a father,
Yeah.
right? So go work that out with God, right? It's
Yeah.
not just on me. You go work it out with him. So they're cultivating their own conversational relationship with him about it.
Yeah.
You've mentioned this a couple times, and I know this is something you teach on regularly. So before I ask my final question, I'll have you expand on it, is presence. So you've
Mm.
kind of said the word a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed as though you allowed your kids to be present and you be present with them through this
Mm-hmm.
process. So that was kind of a living out of your teaching. But what do you teach on, and what are your beliefs around presence?
Yeah. So one of the things that, we live in a world where it's all about you and yourself. And it's been like that for a long time. It's not
Yeah.
just in the last 20 or 30 years, but I mean, everything now about how we construct our identity and social media and all of that. And so what I tell people is that, look, your presence matters because you matter, like you're valuable.
Mm.
And because you're valuable, you bring something to the table. You bring a unique, personality, unique perspective. There's a void when somebody's not there, and there's something
Mm-hmm.
that's filled when you are there. And so it's kind of combating the self idolatry of it's all about me, 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 my happiness, my wellness, my joy. And we work in the wellness industry, right? We work in the identity.
Yeah.
We teach on that with athletes, but recognizing a healthy view of like your presence matters. As our oldest boy, he has his license, he has way more freedom. Sometimes we're like, we just want you home tonight. Well, why? We just enjoy having you around. Well,
Yeah.
we're going to do something. Well, we can, like, what would you like to do? So I think sometimes, but then it's like why communication is important. Like, I like to hear from people if they can or cannot do something, not just because of the implications of maybe what we're doing, but it's like you actually matter. Your
Yeah.
presence matters. So I'm trying to bring that healthy perspective of the person's significance without the self idolatry that sometimes we can fall into.
Dude, that's so good. All right, before I ask my final question,
Mm-hmm.
anything that you're going to be like laying in bed tonight going, man, I wish I would have brought up, or a story that's in your mind that we didn't touch on already?
Let me think. I don't think so. I'll just throw it in the comment section when this goes live if I do. No,
There you go. There you go.
no. I think, yeah, I'm sure there will be, but top of my head, I feel like that it's
Yeah, we
pretty good
touched on a
overview.
lot of good stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, final question. Imagine 30 years from now, you are standing in a cul-de-sac, peering into the homes of your kids. They all live on the same street, and you're peering in the window, and you see something being played out inside that
Mm-hmm.
just puts a big old smile on your face going, yes, like I showed up as a dad and taught my children. And what is it that you would see being played out in their homes?
Yeah, it's something we're trusting for in this next season as well as we get to move. Is what I picture is I see, like, this is kind of funny, but I see like the large plush couches, the sectional couches that you can just like if you put all the sections together, you'd have a huge rectangle. And whether you're watching them, like I just love watching sports and movies, and I see them just lounging.
Mm.
But people kind of coming to and fro from one house to the next, and just a lot of joy, a lot of laughter. We're coming out of a challenging season, and I feel like we have a unique opportunity to create that and show that. It's something
Mm.
our kids talk about is just joy, laughing,
Yeah.
laughing at and with one another in a healthy way, but also just not making too heavy. If like, hey, I gotta go do something. Like, all right, let's go. We'll miss you, but we love you. We empower and champion you into
Mm.
that. So yeah, hopefully,
Beautiful. I
hopefully,
love
go
it.
through have grandkids. But
Yeah, right? Yep,
yeah,
a bunch of them.
I mean, if in 30 years I'm still around, that's pretty darn good.
Oh, come on, bro. You'll be 79,
That's
crushing it.
right. That's right.
Josh, thank you so much for being on the podcast. But even more, it's like knowing that there's men like you getting up out of bed every day, really living out yourself, that social awareness and bringing solution, right? It's like you love your kids so well. And from hearing you talk, it's like you're very intentional about the way that you're raising them, not just your way or the highway, but partnering with your wife, Sarah, to do it together, and be an influence, a light out in the
Mhm.
community. So dude, thank you for being the man you are.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on the show, and just keep doing what you're doing. And I just pray massive blessing on you for this next season of your guys' adventure.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I love what you're doing. Bro, I had one thought as you were closing. I think one thing that I would sit at night and think about, just as you were
Mm,
closing, brought to me is do not parent your children out of fear. I think
mm,
that's where I've made my biggest mistakes and caused them the biggest hurt, is because I was afraid of something. And,
mm.
and I think what you do with this podcast, it encourages and inspires people, fathers, like, hey, you don't have to be afraid. You might muck it up, but you don't have to be afraid. So that's what I
Yeah.
would think about. Yeah. So that's good, man.
So then what would you say is the opposite of fear?
Have grace on yourself when you make a mistake, and then make
Mm,
it right. And
mm,
don't fear. If I'm not afraid of what's going to happen to my children, I'm going to empower them with,
mhm.
wisdom and wise decision making, you know?
Yes, and
Yeah.
that almost comes from the giving of experience, right? The
Yes.
opportunity to go experience, which is tough because you're like, if I didn't let my kid go to this camp trip, or I didn't let my kid go to
Yes.
this place, then they wouldn't have, been hurt or whatever. And
Yep.
so then it's like, I'm not going to do it again. And that's really a tough place to be, because like we want to be the protector,
Yep.
but interesting is like, the protector is I want to say, it's not necessarily protecting them from fully getting their hand burned on the stove
Right.
necessarily.
Yep.
It's like we want to protect their heart, mind, and soul as we're leading them to God, like you've kind of
Mm-hmm.
alluded to. Which means we have to allow life to do what life does
Yeah.
sometimes, and life is a little messy.
Yeah. There you go. Well
Uh,
said.
Bro, I love it. All
Thank
right,
you.
my friend. Until next time. What an incredible conversation. I mean, just flowed so well. So many nuggets in talking with Josh and hearing his approach to fatherhood. One of the things that really stuck out to me was this idea of setting boundaries. Like, as a father, you are to set boundaries. And thinking back to one of my great podcast conversations with Michael Davis, raising 7 sons, is he talked a lot about teaching his sons to be boundary setters. So hearing Josh lean into that as far as a role of his, really important for you and I to set up boundaries for our family to operate in. And it's really to guard our time, to create that close, messy connection that we desire to have. The other component to our conversation that really stuck out to me was just diving deeper in self-control. What does it look like, feel like, smell like? What does it look like practically to have self-control? And then as men, the importance of creating, I guess it would be boundaries for ourselves, so that we are showing up with capacity to respond and not react. All right, my friend, if you enjoy these conversations, please write a review, help spread the word that fatherhood matters. Highly encourage you, shoot a text to a dad. Hey, you're a great dad, and here's a podcast you might enjoy listening to that would inspire you to just continue to step in your role. Us dads, we need those pats on the back. No one's telling us good job, so we need to do that for each other. I want to say thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That's who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide, Ned Shout. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has a little impact and create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.